Awesome. So I think it's started. So again, just as a quick welcome for everyone, this is Microsoft Education Endpoint Office Hours. It is August 23rd, 2022, and we're excited for you all to join us today. So a big couple, I guess the last time we met was August 9th. So a lot of good updates since then. The biggest one being that the service release 2208, that's the August release of Intune, has been released. So you should actually see this in your tenants today. Pretty much the two biggest features that came into this this release was being able to see the contents of your scripts for Mac OS. So if you're managing Macs today within Intune and you're using any kind of scripts to deploy out or to push out to your devices, previously you would upload that script and then assign it, and you are not able to see the contents of that script. So in a similar vein as the filters feature that we had earlier, that filters conversation, if we uploaded a script for macOS devices, we would upload it and then push it out. You know, a year later, you come back and you're like, what is this script? What am I doing? Because you can actually see the contents of that script, or worse, maybe the Intune administrator of the organization has changed and they don't really know what that script is doing. So now you're actually able to see a preview of that script and review it. It is a view only mode, and you can make now an educated assessment of what that script is doing and where it's being applied, and help you kind of navigate that. So nice little update there. And then the other big one is that we GA'd, this has been in preview for a while, custom compliance for Windows devices. So if you are using conditional access on your Windows devices to ensure that individuals can only access their email under, if the device is patched or things like that, those are all pre-built templates within the conditional access portal within device compliance. But with custom compliance for Windows, specifically custom compliance for Windows, we can actually upload our own PowerShell scripts and define what custom compliance may look like. So a file has to be present, or something of that nature. Registry setting has to be present, etc. So that has been in preview for a while. It is officially GA'd in this release. As always, we have our what's new documentation that's been updated. But what I'm really excited about is the new import custom ADMX and ADML templates within Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So for a lot of customers in their modernization journey, moving from group policy to Microsoft Endpoint Manager for profile management and policies like that has there's been some gaps. We are narrowing those gaps. One of those main gaps has been third-party ADMX support. And so now we have the ability to actually import custom ADMX templates into the Intune Admin Center, and then create profiles based on that template. So I'm actually going to give you a quick demo of this and show you what that looks like. So give me 1 second here while I pull it up. All right. I'll give it just a second for this to show up for everyone. If I can get a thumbs up, make sure that everything's working. Perfect. So as you can see, I'm in the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center. If we just go home and we click on devices and go to configuration profiles, you now will see an import ADMX tab up at the top. So you will only see this in the main configuration profiles tab, not if you drill into a specific platform. So if we come over here to import ADMX, you actually now have the ability to import ADMX templates. You can see I have uploaded a couple of them. This one specifically for Mozilla Firefox. When we click this import button, you get a very simple wizard to walk through to import this ADMX template. So I'll just show you this really quick. Again, you have the ability to import both the ADMX file as well as the ADML, which is really nice. Today, only the English ADML file is supported. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click browse, and you're going to see that I've got my Firefox template here, Mozilla Firefox template. I'm not going to actually do this right now because it's going to cause a problem. You'll notice that you can only upload a template by the name if it doesn't exist yet. So Mozilla, I've already uploaded, so it's going to cause a problem. So watch me rename this really quick. And then when I upload, it'll actually go through. So we can go through, find our templates. Oh, that's not the matching one. Right, so Mozilla, and then I can go ahead and click next and create this. You'll see there is real-time progress of upload in progress. And then once it's completed, as you can see, there is an available status so that you can actually start utilizing this in your tenant. And I'll walk you through that in just a moment. A couple of things to be aware of. I talked already about the naming convention. So if the naming, the file name already exists today within your tenant, you cannot upload that. So you can't have multiple ADMX templates named the same thing. The second thing is, if you watch me, I'm going to attempt to do this Firefox one more time. I'm going to rename it. I want you to see what happens. It's actually going to fail. But you won't know it at first. Eventually, it'll come up and say upload failed. And the reason that the upload failed is because there is a dependency in the Firefox ADMX template, which is that Mozilla ADMX template. Once you upload the Mozilla ADMX template and then the Firefox one, it will work as expected. So just note that if any of the ADMX templates have a dependency, you might want to identify those first and then upload. You can always delete these and try again, but the same thing over and over will occur if you don't address the dependency. So just a couple of things to be aware of. What's nice is once we come back into our configuration profiles page here, if I create a profile, I'm going to drop down to Windows 10 and later, and then I'm going to choose templates. Now, most of you are probably using settings catalog for admin templates. That's great. That's not available today right now because this still is in preview. Hopefully we'll see it come into settings catalog, but at the moment it is under templates, and then it is under imported administrative templates preview. So if I click imported, give it a name, Firefox, then you'll notice that my imported ADMX templates are in here, Firefox, Mozilla, and I can drill down and set the specific configurations that I want into this profile. So huge feature gap met. We're super excited to have it within Microsoft Endpoint Manager today. Again, you can utilize, as far as I'm aware, any ADMX templates that you have that are custom. So there is a limit of 10 that you can upload into your tenant. So yeah, definitely try it out. Let us know your feedback so we can continue to improve upon it. Right now, the engineering teams are obviously listening very closely since this is in preview, but we're excited for that.
Hey, Garrett, what about Chrome? Do I need to upload Chrome?
Oh, great question, Richard. Still looking into it. So for those of you who might be aware, and I'll actually reshare my screen, we actually, on your behalf, upload Chrome directly into MEM. So if we come into configuration profiles, if we go into settings catalog for Chrome, from here, we go to add settings. Under admin templates, there is a Google Chrome already built in. What I don't have clarification on is how often do we update this ADMX template on your behalf, as opposed to you uploading your own. So unless anyone has the answer, in most cases, you probably don't need to upload Google Chrome ADMX templates. We're doing that for you, but I'm not sure on the update cadence of that. Maybe if you go download the latest ADMX template right now, there might be some differences between the two. So we'll get clarification on that. But so the answer to your question, Richard, is maybe.
Well, yeah, it really all just depends on if Chrome is introducing some new feature in the browser, and there's a policy setting within an ADMX, like Garrett was saying, we may not have that up to date within settings catalog because we have to upload whenever Google makes a change to their ADMX, we have to upload that into our environment. So there could be a change there that you might not see right away. And so if you upload your ADMX, you might actually have that policy available to you. So
Yeah, great call out.
and
And yes, does a custom one count against the 10 limit? Yes, you can only have 10 custom ADMX templates within the 10 at this moment in time. So I will throw a link into the chat so that you guys can review that. But we're really excited about it. Anything else you want to add, Richard or team?
no, I think it's all good stuff that people have asked for a while. I don't expect a lot of people to have more than 10 of these. I mean, it's possible, but I think 10 for right now is a good number until we get feedback from customers that have like, I don't know, dozens of them that we just don't know about.
Yeah.
We're just kind of waiting on the feedback for that.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. I think there's a few education-specific platforms, like I think Land School has their own ADMX template and a few of those others.
Garrett, I think we lost your audio.
Oh, sorry. That was the Surface headphones telling me, hey, your battery's low, so it cuts my audio out. Yeah, I think there's a few of those third-party edtech platforms that leverage the ADMX template support, so it'll be good to address those, especially when we're looking at moving devices over to Azure AD and things like that. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah, it's possible that that within education we might be a little bit different in terms of how many ADMX uploads we have, given the different content filters and other education specific apps. Because when they develop stuff like this, it's usually with a commercial focus, and so they may not be aware of what we're doing over here in EDU. So so if you guys are using more than 10, give us that feedback, because it's quite likely that engineering is not aware that people are using more than that.
Awesome. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah,
again,
Casey,
yeah, it could be a preview thing too, right, Richard? That maybe it's just limited to 10 for the preview.
Yeah, Casey, if you have a list of what you're using, that could be helpful as well.
Awesome. The next thing that I wanted to call out was the update 2207 release for Configuration Manager. So for those of you that are still using Microsoft Endpoint Manager, Configuration Manager, MEMCM for short, in your environments, the latest release came out last week. So there's a few features that are nice in there, but you know. Yeah, I didn't have anything specific that I wanted to call out. I think the most exciting feature, honestly, for me was onboarding Server 2012 R2 and older servers for Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and making that a more streamlined experience. So if anyone's tried to enroll those down-level servers into MDE before, it's kind of a tricky process, so we've actually simplified that process within Configuration Manager, obviously because Configuration Manager is still the best platform to manage our servers. So creating a nice client setting to onboard those devices directly into MDE is really exciting. I think a few other features are like creating folders for your ADRs and things like that for better organization, which is kind of nice. So yeah, latest releases there. Go check it out, update it. Should be a simple upgrade. And the last thing, which is really exciting, the public preview of Azure Workbooks for update compliance. This is where I'm going to actually pass it over to Richard, and he's going to do a demo and kind of talk about update compliance and kind of the direction we're going, show off this new feature. But essentially, we now have a great way to enable update compliance into your environment and leverage Azure Workbooks to get some great telemetry into your environment on patching of your systems, feature updates, quality updates, end of service, all of that good stuff. So on that note, Richard, I'm going to pass it over to you, and you can introduce this feature.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Garrett. So the way that I'm going to do this is that update compliance has been around for a while now. A lot of customers aren't really aware of it. And I know we've mentioned it quite a bit over the last I guess, couple months when we talked about Windows Update for Business, but it's not, apparent that you really should be turning this on. If you're using Windows Update for Business, you really have very, very little visibility into what your update status is for your devices. And so the way that I'm going to structure this today is that we're going to go over the current way of configuring update compliance. And then we'll talk a bit about the update compliance version 2, what Garrett just showed. There's a public preview right now of setting that up. But the data is not, like, when you look at both solutions, you'll at least the way that I look at both solutions, I think the existing update compliance data is easier to look at. And what we plan on doing is getting the PM that actually owns update compliance. We plan on getting him onto one of our upcoming calls to talk more about the vision of where they're going with update compliance and with this new V2 feature, what they plan on releasing here in the future, and then also taking feedback from you guys, because as we know, especially within education, updates they're tough because you don't want student time and teaching time to be impacted, and so oftentimes we see customers that don't turn on updates throughout the entire school year, and they only update either during the winter break or during the summer. And so update status is all over the place. And so we need an easy way to know what that compliance looks like. So let me move under here. I don't have control of the slides. Okay. Tell you what, I'll just share my desktop.
What about, okay.
Okay. So there's that. Let me just get the deck up. Do flip flop. All right. So update compliance. So what you see on the screen right now is what update compliance is within the Azure portal. In Azure, within the Azure portal, you're using a service actually called Log Analytics to take all of this data. We're ingesting the data from your individual Windows clients, and we're uploading it to Log Analytics. From within Log Analytics, we create these queries that can query all of your Windows Update data. And then there's a dashboard that we sit on top of that. And that's what you're looking at right now, is you're looking at the dashboard of all the data. And so this is data from my environment. I've got a small lab, not a ton of machines. I've got a lot of machines that haven't been active in a while. But in this environment, you can see on the left-hand side, devices that need attention, the overall quality update or security update status, feature update status. So the difference between the two is quality updates are the Patch Tuesday updates that come once a month. Feature updates, those are the updates that come, now it's once a year, but it was twice a year with Windows 10, but now we've changed that cadence to happen just once a year. And then lastly, delivery optimization status, which shows us the percentage of bandwidth savings in both feature and quality updates. And it's not just feature and quality updates, it's also your Windows Store applications. It's any data that comes down from Intune that is wrapped as a Win32 application, and other Windows Update products as well. All of that data actually flows through delivery optimization if you have it configured in your environment. And so this is a way to keep track to say, hey, we turned this delivery optimization thing on, but is it doing anything? You really don't know unless you've got some sort of reporting system to show you that. And this is really the only broad reporting system that we have for this. If you wanted to look at delivery optimization status on an individual client basis, then you could go into settings within Windows, go to settings, go to Windows Update, and within there's an update, a delivery optimization activity monitor that you can view, or you can do it through PowerShell if you wanted to. And then in the middle, this is where we basically just show high level what the overall security update status is, and I'm actually clicked into the security update status. On the left-hand side, I clicked into security update status, and then what you see on the right is just the overall security update status. But you'd get the same kind of thing if you clicked on feature update status or delivery optimization status. But in order to get to that point, we need to first set it up. And so to set it up, what the requirements are that, this is only for Windows, right? So Windows 10 and 11 Pro or above, we're not going to be dealing with Home. For servicing channels, we really only support two: the general availability channel, which used to be the semi-annual channel. That channel or long-term servicing channel are supported. And for diagnostic data, we need to send telemetry data off of the devices. That's it. You have to do that in order for the data to be processed by update compliance. And so that needs to be set to required/basic. And why there are two values here is because in Windows 10, it used to be called basic, I believe, and then now it's required or vice versa. So anyway, it's not the security option. There's a lower status that was called security, or a lower diagnostic data property called security. That was like the lowest one. It's the one up from that. So when you're looking at it now, it should be basic. You just click on that, and or actually it's required, I think, is what you'll see now for all the machines. Some queries within update compliance will require enhanced diagnostic data or optional diagnostic data, depending on if you're on Windows 10 or 11. And device names don't appear by default. So when you look into the update compliance data and you start looking through the queries and you're looking for individual machines, if you don't configure a policy to allow device names, then the device names just don't show up. And it's because we're trying, but by default, we try to scrub the data so that there isn't any personally identifiable information on it. And sometimes in machine names, customers will put the person that the machine is issued to in that device name so they know who it is. And so some customers don't want to have that data uploaded, and perfectly fine. But if you want the device names so you can go and troubleshoot, you go say, hey, we need to go find this device and go fix it, you probably want the name. And so there's a policy for you to set to configure that if you want those. Devices must also be either Azure AD or hybrid Azure AD joined. They can't just be domain joined. They have to at least be hybrid Azure AD joined. And an Azure subscription is required because update compliance uses log analytics. The data's got to go somewhere, and so it needs to go up to Azure, which requires you to have a subscription. But there is no cost for the device data to be stored in log analytics. This data is all just Windows Update data. It's being ingested into the log analytics service, and then from there, we're basically just creating some queries in the dashboard for you to see the data. But there's no cost for you to upload that data. Log analytics by itself, though, does have a cost associated with it. And so if you don't manage your Azure subscription, someone else does in your organization, and you tell them, hey, I need log analytics and I need update compliance, and they might question you and say, hey, well, how much is this going to cost? The cost is free. It doesn't cost anything. The documentation that's listed here inside the docs, it actually mentions that as well. So to turn this on, you would need to go into your Azure subscription, and then from within there, you can do a search for update compliance, or I've got a link here in the deck. This same link is on the docs page as well for update compliance, so you can go and just click on that as well. But it'll take you to this screenshot that you see here. And that page, there's a Get It Now button, just simply click on that, and then it will add update compliance. But if you don't have a log analytics workspace, it'll prompt you to create one. So you'll need to create a log analytics workspace. Once that's been created, update compliance will be associated with that log analytics workspace, and then the data can start to be uploaded to that location. In order to be able to add this, you will need to have either Azure owner or an Azure contributor role in order to add this to the Azure subscription. Now, on the Intune side of things, we need to configure some policies to tell the clients where to send the data. And you can do this in a couple of different ways. And if you look at the documentation will tell you to create custom policies or custom OMA URIs. There's a lot of copy and pasting that you have to do. And those docs were written before the settings catalog was a thing. And so what I did this morning, because I've had this set up in my environment for years, and so I could have just easily just taken a screenshot and showed you what you'd have to set for the custom policies. But I decided to go take a look at settings catalog this morning and see, do we have all of the policies there? Because if we do, it's much easier to do that through settings catalog than it is through custom policies. And so as you can see on my screen here, I'm using the settings catalog now to set the appropriate policies. And so if you go through settings catalog, you can just easily search for like allow commercial data pipeline, allow update compliance processing, allow device name, configure telemetry. You can search for each of these individual items through the settings catalog in the settings picker, and then just select the checkbox for them. It'll add them over here to the left, and then just turn on all these things. So if you can get access to this recording, and I know Mike had asked questions earlier about the recordings for office hours. We're in process of uploading some of those. Some of the recordings didn't actually take place, so some just won't be there. But we do have to get those uploaded to the YouTube channel, and Garrett and I are going to talk about how we will handle that probably either this week or next week. So you'll have a copy of the recording at some point, but I can send out this deck or put the deck up in the Teams chat so that then you guys can just easily, or you can take a screenshot of this if you want. But this is the simplest way, I think, to set up the policies for update compliance within Intune. And once you have these all set up this way, just click on next, and then you'll assign it to a device group. And once set to the device group, then the data will start to flow. Now, when you go through the documentation, there's also talk about this configuration script, and there's a lot of kind of back and forth on whether this script is needed or not. But the answer is no, it's actually not needed. The script is useful, though, because it checks service and network connectivity. So if your services are set correctly and the network is configured correctly, then you don't really need the script. But if you've configured this and you're like, I'm not seeing any data, data's not showing up, and I don't know why, then the script is useful, because the script, you can run it manually and it'll give you feedback and it'll log, what's going on, and tell you if there are any problems, either connecting to the endpoints, to the service, or to the network, or if your services are configured, incorrectly, or maybe some of the policies aren't set right. Maybe you deployed it through Intune, but maybe the policy didn't make it down. There are a number of things that could potentially go wrong, and so that's where the script comes into play. And given that we're in the EDU space here, lots of environments have content filters and firewalls and proxies and all sorts of things that are potentially problematic. And so if you aren't whitelisting certain endpoints to allow access to those that update compliance is trying to upload that data to, then you might miss those. I don't have in the deck the different endpoints, but in our documentation up on docs, the various endpoints are listed there for what's needed. Now, in terms of data latency, so data latency, this data takes time to come up, and after you configure, it's going to take about 2 to 3 days before data starts to show up in update compliance. So if you're going to configure this, today, maybe by Friday, you'll start to see data show up. Definitely by Monday, provided your clients are online and they're communicating. But the data, once it's there, it actually gets refreshed daily. And so if there's no new data from a client, we still refresh it on the back end. So there's a daily refresh that's always happening, whether new data is coming in for a specific machine or not. And then the last 28 days worth of data is refreshed. So we're not going to refresh that data going back, a year. You're going to basically get about a month's worth of data about these machines that's going to be refreshed. Okay, so let's take a look at what this is all about. So in Microsoft Endpoint Manager, you won't actually see any of this because it's all pretty much in Azure. What we do need Endpoint Manager for is for the update profiles, and so I'll show that here in a minute. But in Azure, let's go to portal.azure.com. Oh, didn't want to go there. Yeah. Okay, so if you're going to Azure for the first time, you've never done any of this before, this is the view that you get, and it can be kind of complicated to kind of know where to go. And so up here at the top, we can just do a search for log analytics, and that'll take you to your log analytics workspaces. But you can also, I think update compliance shows up here. And maybe not. there's a marketplace item for update compliance. So if you were adding update compliance to your environment, you could do a search just within the Azure portal, click on update compliance, and this is how you would get it added to your environment. Now I've already added it to mine, so it's already telling me, or it's already asking me for a workspace and a resource group to add it to. So I don't need to do this. But if you're trying to set this up for the first time, you could search through it. You could use that link that I showed earlier in the docs. There's a link for that too. Once you have it in your subscription, then it's going to ask you to create the solution here. So, but since I've already created it, let's go take a look at what happens after it's been created. So for my log analytics workspace, I have one here called update compliance. So when I click into this takes me to this workspace. And when you go to this workspace, it's kind of complicated. It's not easy to find where your data is, because log analytics wasn't really designed. It's kind of hard for me to say it wasn't designed for update compliance. Log analytics was really designed for you to upload logs for random applications. You could be for some random app that you have in your environment that you want to keep track of, and then do some queries against the logs in the environment. If you think of it kind of like Splunk, if you've ever used Splunk to collect logs from all sorts of devices within your environment, and then you can run queries against that. That's kind of like what the product was intended for. And so what we're doing is we're taking like Windows Update logs or Windows Update data, collecting all of that, and then you're writing your own queries against that data. And so when you look at something like this, there's a lot to it. It's not as simple as just, oh, I turn on update compliance and then now here's just this simple table. It's like, no, you got to go into the log analytics product and actually find what you're looking for. So if you click into workspace summary, this will take you to a tile for update compliance. And this tile is where you go to get into the update compliance workbook and that data. And so now we're at that screenshot that I showed earlier at the beginning of the presentation. And so within here, I can go and start to click through and see what the status is of my updates. But just to kind of go over this, so you land on the need attention workspace. And so when you click through this, it tells you the devices that, in my case, I've got one device that is out of support. This is a machine that's running Windows 1809. It's not supported anymore. So it's telling me that, hey, you've got to go do something with this machine. But it would also tell me if I have any update issues over here, if they've failed, progress stalled, canceled, rollback, uninstalled. I'll have all that information over here. And then on the right, these are a list of queries. And these are pre-written queries that you can click into to understand various statuses of updates that are going on in the environment. For instance, I can click on something like this, security update deployment issues. I could click on this and it'll give me the query through update analytics. I got scan time. And so these are just all a bunch of pre-built queries. You can click through these and you can use them as an idea to maybe create your own log analytics query. And so if I click into this device here that is out of date, you can see in here that I'm in this update compliance or log analytics query. And this is a pretty simple syntax. It's using KQL. So if you've ever used Defender for Endpoint, you're doing threat hunting, it's very similar to that. So I'm using this WAS update status table, and then where need attention status equals out of support OS version. So I got one machine here, and it's running 1809. There's a lot of data. I'm not going to go over every single column here, but you can see lots of data. I've got the last scan time. I usually find last scan to be pretty important. When I was doing a lot of work with SCCM, Windows update troubleshooting was like probably about 80% of my job. And so knowing the last scan time was important to know, hey, is this machine around or not? And so we get a good high level view of what's going on with the device. And then that's the same data that we see across the top. I pretty much get the data that's down in this view as well. And so all this data is available to you, and you can query on these different attributes as well. So you can go ahead and create different attributes here if you wanted to filter down. Like if I had, thousands of devices, but I wanted to find just the machines that had maybe there's something older like 1803 or 1709. If I had some machines that were really old and I wanted to break that down, then I could go and, filter my query down to be something, much smaller. So lots of opportunity for you to use that. And then also within here, you can see that we're using this WAS update status table. And so here I've got WAS update status, and then underneath that, all of the different attributes that I can query against. And you're also seeing here that I got this UC client. This is some of the stuff from version 2 that we're adding. So it's added this to my environment. And that's where I'm starting to get some alerts. And we'll talk more about that here in a minute. Okay, go back. And so I looked at my machine that's out of support, but I could also look at my security update stats. And I showed this earlier on the previous slide. But I've got 3 machines that are up to date for Windows 21 H2. And then I've got Windows 11 21 H2. I've got 0 up to date, and I've got 1 not up to date. And so similar to what I just showed, if you click into these, you would go to the same kind of experience. And so I can click here. I've got a different query where my update classification is security and OS version is Windows 11 21 H2. Don't know why my results aren't showing though. There we go. So I got a couple machines here. This looks like the same. This is the same machine, but I'm on 2 different releases. Anything interesting happened here? It's possible I reimaged this thing, and so I've got the same name, same machine twice. That's why it's on a different release version. But again, same kind of idea as earlier. I'm not going to belabor the point, but as you click into these, you can start to kind of see the point where we can start querying on data and get some additional information that Intune does not provide you. Intune will not provide you any of this data in the Intune portal itself. It's all coming in through log analytics and update compliance. And then on the right-hand side, we break things down based off of the security update deployment status. So we see the different OS builds and the sub version number here of .856 or .1889. We can see, this is the OS build, and then within that, how many machines actually have that installed. And then if you go down further, this actually shows the previous security update. So on the top, it's the latest. And then on the bottom, this is the previous. This is N-1. And so I'm looking at .1826 for Windows 10, .1889 for Windows 10, 21H2. And so I can see here that I've got 4 of these that have installed that, and I've got 3 that have installed the latest one here, but I've got 1 that needs some work. It's probably just offline. It's probably a VM that hasn't been turned on in a while. But this gives you the ability to start tracking. And again, if we click into these, another query is run. So you can kind of get the idea that all of this is all query driven. And if you want to get fancy, you can create your own queries. And we've even seen some of our Microsoft Endpoint Manager MVPs, like on Twitter and on their various websites. They've actually created dashboards and other interesting things to enhance some of the reporting. And so you can get pretty creative with some of this stuff if you really want to. All right, so that's security update, and then feature update, very similar to what I just showed. This gives us a high-level overview of the various releases within our environment. So here I've got my 1809 machine that's out of support, and then I've got my 21H2 machines for both Windows 10 and Windows 11, and they're both showing as up to date. So I'm good there. Something needs to be done with this machine though. It's out of support. And then lastly, delivery optimization. So delivery optimization, as if you don't know what it is, delivery optimization is a peer-to-peer technology that we use for our Windows machines to share content amongst themselves. Now, if you're in the K-12 space and you're dealing with 30 devices in a classroom, give or take, and you've got 1 access point in that classroom, and you have relatively small hard drives on those machines, very, the devices may not be very powerful. You may kind of cringe at the idea of having devices share content with each other. And that's for good reason. Those devices probably could potentially have some problems doing that. But you might have other machines that have more horsepower, and those machines can actually house some of that content. You might also have some issues where your network team might come to you and say, hey, Windows is just taking up so much bandwidth because it's going out to the internet and downloading all this content. There's all these built-in Windows applications that are constantly downloading things from the store, like the calculator app. That's a store-based app. Even Notepad is now a store-based app. And all of these apps that come within Windows are going out to the Microsoft Store to download content. And so your network team might come to you and say, hey, you guys are taking up a lot of bandwidth. Is there anything that can be done? And that's what delivery optimization is supposed to solve for, is sharing that content amongst your other devices. We're actually working on a private preview right now to allow for standalone Intune managed devices to share content amongst each other. I'm sorry, standalone Intune devices to download content from something called a Microsoft Connected Cache server. Microsoft Connected Cache it's effectively just a box that you would stand up. It's a VM that you would stand up, and that VM will house all of the Windows Update content. It'll house the Win32 apps that come from Intune, the store content, Office content, all of that content can be stored on that server. So each individual client doesn't have to go outbound to the internet to download all that content. And all of that comes through delivery optimization. And so to track all of that, this is where you would go. This is where we can see in the middle column that says device configuration, I have 6 devices that have peering turned on. And I can create my peering in a number of different ways. I can peer based on HTTP and LAN. So I can basically say that devices can go out to the internet and share content, or they can go just to my machines on the LAN, or they can do both. And I have it set so that only on the LAN. I'm not sharing any content over the internet. I don't want my next door neighbor to get any content that I have. They don't need that. But I do want my clients internally, because if I'm re-imaging a bunch of machines, I don't want to download Office, which is like 3 gigs or 2.5 gigs. I don't want to download that every time. I want to have that on a server here. And then every time I re-image a machine, I just want to go and download that from that server. And so I can deploy something through Autopilot, which will then deploy the app through Intune. And then when I go try to get the content from Intune, delivery optimization will kind of come in and say, hey, your content is on a server here. Go download it from that server. Don't go download it from the internet. And so that makes for a much better experience. And so there are a bunch of other different configurations, but by and large, most will either be set up for LAN or potentially group. If you're doing group, you can group based off of a GUID that you create, and you can basically just stamp and say all of these devices that have this GUID, they can all share content amongst each other. So you can get pretty granular on how you want to handle your delivery optimization. But once you have that configured, now you can start to look at this data, and we can look at our bandwidth savings and where the bandwidth is coming from and what's being used. Now, the way that the delivery optimization works is that if there's new content that needs to be downloaded and it's not on your network anywhere, well, it's obviously got to come from the internet. And once it comes from the internet, then the content can be stored on your connected cache server, or it just stays locally on the client. And if you have delivery optimization set up for all of your machines, then your machines can share content within each other. But you can also turn that off if you want, depending on how you have your policies set up. And so in my environment, I've got a server that's stood up, but I haven't really kept my clients all that active. So I've got maybe like 1 or 2 that are active. And so if there's new content that comes out and it hasn't been downloaded yet, then it's got to be downloaded and then it goes up to my server. So in this environment here, you see that a lot of content actually came from the internet. So I only have 11% bandwidth savings, and 90% of that is coming from HTTP. So when I look at some of the data here on the right-hand side, I can then break this down in terms of the total bytes that have been downloaded on the LAN versus how much has been downloaded non-peer. Non-peer is over the internet. And so when I look at things like quality updates, that's 597. That to me looks like maybe 1 machine is probably on the network that's just downloading content. And so if there's only just a single machine, then it's just going out directly to the internet. But that content's been stored. And so if there's another machine that comes online, then it will go and download that data from the server that it uploaded it to. And then it's the same for the other content types. So apps and Office and whatever other might be. But as you can see, we have the ability now to monitor all this data, and you can keep track of hey, is delivery optimization even working in our environment or is it not? And I just anecdotally, I have a customer. This is probably a few years ago, maybe actually before the pandemic, where their network team actually came to us and they're like, dude, this is like Windows is just taking up a tremendous amount of data. Like our bandwidth, like when we went to Windows 10, bandwidth like exploded. There's just so much data that was going out over the internet when we went to Windows 10. And we've got to control this somehow because our bandwidth, like the bill is expensive. And so we configured delivery optimization. And when we looked at this report, when we looked at all the different content types, we found that the apps content type was by and large the largest, which is funny because you would expect something like quality updates or even feature updates. But at the time, they were just going to Windows 10, so we hadn't had a ton of feature updates coming out just yet. But it was the app updates that were significant. And it's because if you think about your cell phone, you might have a dozen apps that update every night. And with Windows, it's not all that different. With all the different built-in applications that are in Inbox and Windows, there's a lot of applications there that have to be updated. And you may not use most of those. And you may pull some of those out, with scripts or whatever. But that content is constantly downloading on a daily basis. It's not like Patch Tuesday, where one Tuesday a month we start releasing updates for the operating system. The store app content is every day. And so we were seeing that when we looked at this, that it was the store app content that was taking the most. And when we turned delivery optimization on, it really lowered that overall bandwidth percentage that was going outbound. So it was actually helping quite a bit. All right, so that's what you get with update compliance, version 1. Let's talk about version 2. So with version 2, and I've got 5 minutes here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because it's new, and I want to get David, who's the PM that owns this feature. I want to get him to come on to talk about more in depth of what they're doing here. But just to kind of give you a high level of what we announced. If you go into your Microsoft 365 Admin Center and you already have update compliance configured, then this is going to be really easy. If you don't have it configured already, then you'll have to create a workspace and configure it just like I showed. But once it's been configured, then you just basically add, would come into here and take care of it. But go into Microsoft 365 Admin Center, go under Health, and then select Software Updates. And within here, you have 2 tabs. You have Office or Microsoft 365 Apps. This has been here for a long time. And then now we have Windows. And within Windows, your first thing that you're going to do is you're going to click on Configure Settings. And when you do this, it's going to ask you for your Azure subscription, and it's going to ask you for your Log Analytics workspace. And if you haven't done this yet, you'll have to do it. And once you do it, then these will be able to be selected. You'll select these. Once you do that, there's a link up here that says go to Update Compliance. It's a lot easier to get to Update Compliance from here than it is from what I showed earlier. Because earlier you had to go like find your Log Analytics workspace and go find the workbook, and you start clicking through a bunch of different things. But from here, it's just go to Software Updates, go to Update Compliance. Why this isn't in Intune, I don't know. It would be nice though if this was also in Intune, so you have one place to go. Now from within here, we've got a different view, and this is where I'm still kind of on the fence here of which view I like better. I think I like the first view better. You guys might have a different opinion on that. But again, this is new, and there are things that are being added to it. What is nice about this, though, is that we're working on things called alerts. And alerts are going to allow you to be alerted when there's a problem. I don't know exactly what that means in terms of, hey, can I get an email? Can I get some notification? Or if it's just simply we're using the term alert, and then you still have to come in here, and there's going to be like a box here that says active alerts, and you click into that, and you can see all your devices. I unfortunately don't have. I don't have. And what's interesting about this is that I don't like end of service. I know I have one machine that's on service. We saw it, but I don't see it here. And so there's still some things here that I saw questions on about all this. So that's why I kind of left this for last, because I don't want to lead you guys with this and say, hey, go turn this on, because it is in preview right now. So just know that there are some things that are being worked on here, and this is the direction that we're going. But I would rather that you focus on what I showed here on the existing delivery optimization until some of this stuff kind of gets fleshed out. But again, this is coming. Again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time right now on it. We'll have a much more deeper session with David once I can get his availability and see when he's willing to come on. But with that, we've got 3 minutes, and I've got a Teams icon that's yellow, or that's pink. So I'm sure there's people. And Garrett's like, I like V2 better. Okay, Garrett. Well, you tell me what kind of data, what you can use out of this view, why you like it better.
I'm just saying that I like it better. I think it's more I don't know, actionable. Like I don't know if you show this. I was only half paying attention, but total enrolled devices, right? If you go into view status, now we can have a breakdown. And I love donuts. I think donuts are easier to comprehend, right? But then as you drill down, right, you can get into those tables and then you can export the data. So I think it's bringing it more to the forefront. I think having it broken up in tabs as quality updates versus feature updates is a little more simplified. So yeah, I'm excited about this. I think as long as they can maintain the simplicity of it while giving rich data, I think it'll be a win. But we'll keep providing the feedback, and especially from you guys. We want you guys to enable this to let us know. I think Windows Update reporting within Intune has always been a gap as compared to Configuration Manager, right? Mostly because you don't have the data. And so being able to come in here and kind of run your own queries and establish some of these data sets that we haven't really had exposure to in the past is a great starting point. And you can kind of build your custom dashboards as you need. So again, I like V2. I'm excited about the direction we're going. I'm excited for when David can share a little bit more, but definitely enable this. Again, it's all based on telemetry, right? So if you haven't enabled this in your tenant, get it enabled, start collecting that data. And then again, both are live. So you can kind of play with both of them and get a feel for it.
All right, I'm just looking through questions here. Is there anything that I missed or I need to answer? Let's see.
Oh, I don't think so.
So will this box act like a update DP for specific content, or our Intune devices can grab from an on-network VM server? Yeah, so it's kind of like a distribution point for Intune. I mean, I guess that's probably the easiest way to think about it. But it's more than that, because it has all of your update data, or all your updates for Windows, Office, Intune Win32 apps, all of that content's there. Not single file MSIs. If you're deploying single file MSIs through Intune and you're not using it through a Win32 app, if you're not using the Win32 app type, you're just doing line of business MSIs, that content does not come through. We don't recommend you use single file MSIs through the line of business application type. If you take those single file MSIs, rewrap them as Win32 apps, upload those, update, and then delivery optimization will leverage that. A configuration manager DP can be used as a connected cache internal server. Unfortunately, it can't dedupe the content already in the content library. That's true, and in fact, that's what I did for a long time. I actually did that. I used a config manager server for my Intune Azure AD joined machines that had nothing to do with Intune. But I was still able to specify the server name for my SCCM DP with Microsoft Connected Cache enabled. And so I could leverage that to download my content. So I didn't have to go out over the internet every time. But this new way, using the new Microsoft Connected Cache servers, that doesn't rely on the SCCM distribution point anymore. It's going to be a standalone VM that you would set up. Let me actually grab there's a private preview that you can actually sign up for. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, here it is. So here's a link to that.
Actually,
Rachel,
Ryan
yeah, I'll
already
put that
shared
link
that in
over
the
there.
chat.
Oh, Ryan, sure. Okay, cool. Yeah, so go to that link that Ryan had shared, and within there, it's got the diagram on exactly how it works. You know, I've been testing this for a while now. It works great. I see my content coming down from it. It reduces the bandwidth within my environment. But you will have to set up an Azure. If you don't have an Azure subscription, you'll have to get that set up. And then once you do have your subscription, go through and just follow the instructions. It's pretty straightforward. It didn't take a whole lot to get set up. And the doc is actually really good. Surprisingly, sometimes the docs are a little bit confusing, but I found that that the doc was pretty easy to follow. And so there's some good troubleshooting things there. There's a form that you have to fill out at the top, somewhere in here, unless I took it away. Take this survey right here. So you take this survey, and you'll need to provide your Azure subscription ID, and then one of the PMs from our Microsoft Connected Cache team will reach out to you and set you up. Now, I don't know if they're not, like, I have no idea if they've stopped taking people or if they're allowing anyone that fills out the survey to get in. So if you aren't getting in and you like really want this, let me know or let us know. And we can see about talking to them and see if there's just not accepting new people, or if there's anything that you might need to do. So, but with that, I know we're over time. So have a great rest of your day, and we shall see you next time. Take care, everyone.